it fades out, and you're on TV, and you're on a podcast on a Monday night. It used to be on a Wednesday night.
I'm still hearing music. Oh, there we go.
Welcome to Generation Movie on our new night, Monday. My name is JW Colwell. I'm joined as always by my co-host in crime, my movie guru, a guy I go to for movie knowledge, Rich Drees. How are we doing tonight, Rich?
I'm doing pretty well. And yourself?
I'm good. I've decided tonight's episode I'm going to be JW the podcaster. Don the author, Don the drinker.
I get it.
Okay. Well, just in case
I could use a drink.
Well, so welcome to our podcast tonight, Generation Movie. Or of course, we're on the Indie Escape Network. We always want to talk about the myriad of people, the super talented folks that are on the network with us. If you want to pay attention to everything going on with the Indie Escape Network, and I really recommend you do, we have our YouTube channel, youtube.com, the Indie Escape Network. You can get all of our podcasts there, and as well as all of the other podcasts that are on the network. We have Gabe's podcast on Tuesdays. We have Wendy's Ears podcast about background vocal talent and all kinds of stuff like that on Thursdays. And she has a very big guest coming up this week. So a lot of good things going on in the network. We also have a Facebook page where you can find all of the information, www.facebook.com, the Indie Escape. And away we go on a Monday night. I forget on Wednesdays. Keep on saying on a Wednesday night, but here we are on a Monday night, our new night of the week.
It is Monday?
It is definitely Monday. I guess I got a case on Mondays for a second.
And happy Purim to all who celebrate. Boo!
Yes. happy Purim to all of our friends of the chosen faith. We appreciate you joining us on a high holy day. Joe says, "Good evening, gentlemen. Happy Monday." Happy Monday to yourself, Joe.
Happy Monday, Joe.
Yeah,
thanks.
Joe and David Madison and Scott Schiaffo last night in the end of the night had a guest from the UN on. So you're not going to get that tonight. Tonight you're going to get us talking about Ray Milland and the bottom of a bottle with Billy Wilder. So it's no less. It's not less classy. It's just different. But here's the thing. We also talk about things that are going on in the movie industry. Oscars are coming up next week. But the big news this week ends. Tell me, Rich, how a movie, $60 million is grossed by a third boxing film in early March. How does that happen? Creed grosses $58.7 million at the box office, exceeding expectations in some regards by almost $20 million. Is it? What's your thought on that particular thing happening?
I think mostly unseasonably warmer weather is getting people wanting to get out of the house. They want to go to the movies. They're feeling, this is the year where people are going to start feeling really much more comfortable about going to the cinema. And right now, everybody's like, well, Quantumania sounds terrible. I like the other two Creed movies. Let's go check this out instead.
For those that can't wrap their mind around Cocaine Bear, which is, again, that's on you, not the people who made Cocaine Bear.
Sure. Cocaine Bear's a lot. It's a rip snorting good movie.
It's growly good fun. It's grisly good fun as well. There's a lot of gore.
Oh yeah, and
also it's about a bear. But the shocker this weekend is that the third Creed film basically grosses $100 million worldwide. We're also looking at a March at the box office that is. There are a bunch of heavy hitters on deck this March. It's one of the first Marches that we can talk of in a long time, like say 2 or 3 years. And March is usually a drag month, to
begin with,
pre-pandemic.
The
last pandemic has been
kind of a little
awkward. But we're looking there is a possibility of $1 billion March with the product that's going to be out in theaters. We have Scream 6 opening on Friday. We have Shazam opening the following week. John Wick Chapter 4 the following week, and then the Dungeons and Dragons movie that everybody is, depending if you've rolled dice in your life, have been waiting for your entire life. Maybe I don't know, because apparently we're about to get Dungeons and Dragons right for the first time ever on screen.
If you have even the slightest bit of a D&D nerd, twinge in your heart, you saw like in the trailers an intellect devourer, or an owlbear, or a gelatinous cube,
displacer beast, and a mimic.
Yes, I was like, oh my god, I was a
well, that was
yes, all of them in one room. But
how many folks in your party or people knew it was the Red Wizards of Thay? Anyway, that's how nerdy I am. But yeah, so I mean, we're looking at a possibility of $1 billion box office, and you have, for the first time, theaters kind of chomping at the bit, going, there's product that people want to see. The Scream movie that came out last year did wonders at the box office, considering we're 5 movies deep on this franchise, and 6, they're going in a whole different direction. And I've heard some people who've seen it say it's very good, like it's different and unique and special. And let's see, we got a couple more. Oh, good evening, Ken McKernan. Good evening, friends. Good evening, Ken. Ken writes, waiting for 65. I forgot about 65. 65 is one of those eclectic weird movies that you just, what has it got? It's got dinosaurs. What else has it got? It's got pew pew pew. It's got laser beams.
It could be fun, but 4 days out from from its release, I still have not seen an invite to a critic screening for this, which sometimes is a big red flag. I mean, I just think it's one of those.
I think it looks like a blast, but it's Adam Driver and a kid versus dinosaurs.
Yeah,
sign me up, sure. But yeah, no critic screening scares me. But Sony is notorious though for not really doing critic screenings. So Ken's waiting for 65. David Madison chimes in. Hello, gentlemen. David, I'm thank you for tuning in. I tuned into his show last night. He had a UN delegate on. It was an incredible show. She was a big movie fan. She's doing all these great things in the world, and we're going to talk about Ray Milland hitting the bottom of a bottle. It's the eclectic league of the Indie Escape Network. What was that?
And now it's this war crimes of a show.
Well, I wouldn't go that far. I would just say we're gonna talk about Ray Milland in way more detail than they did last night. But she was like talking about giving women voice in the free world. So it was an incredible show. Actually, she was very humble and warm and just incredibly decent. And I kudos to both Joe and Scott and David for pulling it off. She was fantastic. Anyway, big movies coming out. Oscar weekend coming up. One of the things that is happening in the box office as well, as we talk a little bit, what's hasn't happened for the Oscar nominees this year, Rich? One, the streaming boat has sailed on all of them, and they're not doing great on streaming. And 2, right, they're not in theaters anymore to be able to get that Oscar bump. And so it is a weird thing, because usually January, February, March, pre-pandemic is for Oscar films.
Mm-hmm. Well,
right?
I mean, a lot of these came earlier in the year. And so they've run their regular theatrical cycle. Boom, they're available in various spots for streaming. But there are some theater chains out there, like Cinemark near me, is running like 2 weeks of the top, the 10 Best Picture nominees. So you have like one being shown each day. So like you could go on Tuesday and you have 2 chances to catch Everything Everywhere All at Once. And then Wednesday, top one. Thursday, whatever, and they kind of cycle those through.
AMC is doing a pass where you pay like $40 and you can go and see any one of the movies at any given time that are nominated for Best Picture.
Mm-hmm.
But the times are not. It's not one day for each. it's like, Banshees of Inisherin might be playing at 12, and then something else might be playing at 3 or something else at 5, and so it's kind of a weird thing. But what I'm not noticing is the bump. It's a weird place where we're like, surely some of the movies don't need a bump. Like Maverick doesn't need it. Elvis, Avatar, right? They don't need bumps. But the Banshees of Inisherin and Fabelmans and a couple other ones could use it. Again, Everything Everywhere All at Once doesn't need it, but some of the other ones could.
Yeah, I would love for more people to be seeing something like the Women Talking, which has a couple of nominations. I think it's a fantastic film. One of
Sarah Polley has become one of our better filmmakers.
Yes.
For anybody who doesn't pay attention to her, she had a movie called The Sweet Hereafter. Yeah. She's becoming a really kind of a fantastic female directing voice and writer as well. What else? Oh, okay. Interesting. I don't know why. Hold on. Rich just sent me a chat. I'm gonna try to fix something.
I don't think it's just a sync issue, really. You seem to be just
okay. I'll be right back. Hold on. We'll fix it.
Yeah, pop out and pop back in, maybe.
Yeah.
To do it. And you get to watch me drink a nice, cool, caffeinated beverage. This is not liquor, despite the topic of what we're doing tonight. But yeah, I don't know if anybody else was seeing it, but on my end,
how about
JW.
Now?
Oh, perfect. JW's video and audio kind of slipped out of sync, and anybody watching it, if that that would drive me.
We got it fixed. Thank God. Yeah. I had to jump out and come back in. Always watch your channel. We appreciate it, David. Thank you. So we of course are doing in celebration of the Oscars coming up. We're doing the Oscars Decade Cavalcade, a very exciting moment. We're doing 8 best pictures from 8 different decades. Tonight's is fun. It's dark. It's so fucking dark.
It's dances beautiful. Right on the line of the production.
It's almost a horror film. I'm not gonna lie. When we're talking about Best Picture being horror films, this is very close. There are hallucinations. There are scenes in a drunk tank that is not for the faint of heart, even in a film made in 1945. Of course, we're talking about The Lost Weekend and a Best Picture winner at the 18th Annual Academy Awards in 1945. And it is directed by acclaimed and master filmmaker Billy Wilder, who of course made some of the greatest, films in film history: Sunset Boulevard, The Apartment. He's a great filmmaker. So for the second week in a row, we get a genius filmmaker that is basically given. In this case, he's given a book. He's given one of the great books of the time. It's about alcoholism. It's profound, and we're going to talk about it a little bit tonight as we get into this. It's a cutting edge film. Even I would put it up with today. You could release it today, and it's close. Like it's close to being like you could watch it on any network and not. Aside from the fact it's black and white, aside from the fact it's made in 1945, it covers a lot of issues that we're seeing more and more of in our daily lives and as we progress.
I would say the acting is not quite as naturalistic as audiences are used to today. In that
stylized.
Way, it's very much of its time, but I think they push that stylization which comes before Meisner and the method acting and all that other stuff that started to being developed at this time. I think, pushing this more, as you said, stylized classical acting really up to its edge with this movie And it was one thing as I was rewatching it this afternoon. It's the one thing I was thinking about. I was like, wow, this, even for the time, this is really harrowing. And a lot of it's down to
dark.
Ray Milland's performance here. He's really pushing the envelope of what acting was like at the time.
Yeah, no, it's got this glossed over amazing kind of like, he is this lost dreamer that finds love in a bottle, and it's the only place that really makes him truly happy. There's a sequence in the bar where he's talking to the bartender, and he's just like, where can I go to get the weights off my balloon than the bottom of a bottle? And he does a lot of talking with his hands, and it's a little chilling. Like it's and the interesting thing is Billy Wilder, who had he had just come off of Double Indemnity, which is one of the great film noirs. And the production of this movie, as we get into it, the interesting thing here is he's coming off that great movie. He's coming off an incredible movie, really. Double Indemnity, one of the great film noir films ever made. Right?
Yes.
I mean, when you talk about film noir, it's that movie and whatever else you want to put on the list in the last 50 years, right? That one's got to be at the top of the list. So he's just gotten done working with Raymond Chandler. And some would say that when he read this book and decided to adapt it, the rumors in Hollywood were it was basically to show Raymond Chandler, hey, this is what working with you is like. This is how working with you is.
That's very believable.
You're Raymond the writer.
I've read about Chandler's life, along with Hammett, along with all those other writers of hard-boiled detective fiction back at the time. They were all
and that's an interesting little tidbit that's out there. When you're talking about production in the 40s, you're talking about star power. You're talking about trying to find people that are going to make it believable. Now, Billy Wilder, basically, he signs up Ray Milland, and it's not, it's basically a choice that studio made, right? Don Birnam is going to be this character. There are other people they want, right? One of the things that you read about is that they were talking about Charles Brackett, who was a big collaborator with Billy Wilder on almost all of his movies. They were talking about Jose Ferrer, right? But one of the things the studio said was, if you're going to make this down and dirty movie, we need an audience. We need somebody to go to this movie. And also the studio exec made the comment that if you're making this movie about alcoholism and trying to make it so realistic, don't you want a big star in it so that people can see it happens to everyone? And so they enlist Ray Milland, right?
Now, just want to back up to Charles Brackett was, obviously co-screenwriter on this, producer on this. Great career in Hollywood. He also was married to the great screenwriter Lee Brackett. And she also has a great career through Hollywood. Look all of her stuff up. I would guarantee you everybody's seen at least one of her movies that she worked on. And that movie is Empire Strikes Back. She was the first writer that Lucas worked with on that. Unfortunately, she passed away after she turned in her first draft. And then George Lucas had somebody else take over for it. But a lot of the bones of that movie, including the Princess Leia Han Solo thing, we owe to her writing in that first draft. So,
excellent, amazing tidbit. It's Kasdan, right? Lawrence Kasdan that comes in and does the polish on Empire, including the big reveal that we won't talk about.
Spoiler warning for a movie 41 years old now.
There are lots of people who haven't seen it, man. Like there are videos every day you can watch of kids finding that shit out for the first time. But I would like the other thing. To be in a theater at the age of 6 and have that drop on you is just brutal. Also, I was a Han Solo guy, so it was bad. I was in mourning because there was carbon freezing and like they didn't save him. Like what the hell? But they wanted Jose Ferrer, right? So they don't get him. They basically get talked into, not talked into, but basically studio kind of mandated Ray Milland, right? Very good actor who'd never really, who's had good work but never had great work. And some would argue that the movie, while this is a highly stylized version of himself, this is one of the most distinct characterizations that he had ever done. Another really interesting thing about the shoot and the production, part of it is shot on location in New York, but to create distinct realism, they placed hidden cameras on 3rd Avenue in East Manhattan. And they put them behind boxes or in the back of trucks. And so they actually captured Ray Milland walking up and down and interacting with 3rd Avenue and pedestrians and who didn't have any idea that a film was made. So the idea that this drunk guy is stumbling down the street.
And you could never get away with doing that today.
There would be
everybody to sign releases and all sorts of stuff.
Right. There'd be paparazzi and all kinds of things. But it's, basically, it was they had also for the first time filmed in Bellevue Hospital. So it's the psychiatric alcoholic ward at the time. Basically would never ever be used again on film. So when I say that the film is like a horror film and harrowing, the stuff shot at Bellevue is terrifying. It is absolute terrifying stuff. And whether you've had somebody in your life that's an alcoholic or substance abuse or anything, the stuff was going on in 1940s hospitals with regards to addiction and alcoholism, which at that point in real world is viewed as a moral flaw or as for comedy or for whatever. This production takes it very seriously. And also early on in the script, Brackett and Wilder make the decision that they call it a disease that is very similar to having a heart attack or a lung failure, which is important to the production because the production becomes a rallying cry almost, right? This movie is sort of like the first time alcoholism is put on screen in not done for laughs.
Yeah. And you're very... Yeah, you're as you were saying, it's not done for laughs, and it's not done. This is one of my big problems with people, even today, when they view addiction as some kind of moral failure and not as a disease, which it is. I think people who want to view that stuff as a moral failure are just looking to feel superior about themselves, and that's a whole nother thing that they need to figure out with their own selves.
That's a whole other podcast for us.
Yeah,
But here it's
this is so empathetic to that idea that as horrific as we see everything happening to him, all the way down to his DTs and his hallucinations and everything.
Terrifying. They're absolutely terrifying.
We have an empathy for him. We want him to get better. We fear for him. And that person line enables so much of this movie to work on an emotional connection level.
And Jane Wyman is cast. They wanted everybody under the sun. They wanted Olivia de Havilland. They wanted Katharine Hepburn. But Jane Wyman is such an America's sweetheart kind of actress at this point in her career, right? She basically comes in and there is a sweetness to her in this movie that is absolutely endearing. You root for her. There's a sequence where she's waiting on the stairs for him to come home. She pins notes on the door. She does everything in her power, and she sticks by him, even as his brother kind of goes, "Hey, I'm out. I can't handle this."
Yeah. There's a sweetness that still underlies a great strength of character and a belief, and that's all that fuels her love for him, and she's going to stand by him.
And tell me when they're shooting, when you're watching this movie, Rich. Tell me you don't get some sort of an amazing magnetism, like a magnetic part of the performance for her. Although she's not nominated for an Oscar or anything, she doesn't get any nomination for it, which is weird to me. I think they made a mistake there. But there are 2 or 3 moments, and she will. There are 2 or 3 moments in the movie where Ray Milland is a towering figure, and she basically asks him to come down so that she can kiss him. Mm-hmm. And it's very sweet, very endearing. But her whole take of like, you know, it's a real relationship. It's one of the most profound relationships about alcoholism that you'll ever see on film. And again, I think this is a film that you can watch over and over again. So
ironically, I want to just kind of tangent here for a second. Ironically, of course, everybody knows Jane Wyman was the first wife of Ronald Reagan, and today is actually the anniversary of the passing of Ronald Reagan's second wife, Nancy Davis Reagan, who was also an actress. It was in Hellcats of the Navy with her, at the time, future husband. So it was just weird that we were talking about one of his ex-wives on the anniversary of the passing of the other. It struck me as funny and weird and ironic. And
well, that's our show. That's our show in a nutshell, isn't it? Like that seems that's
weird connections. Yeah,
that's perfect for us.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things that happens in production, they have a problem with the soundtrack. They have a problem with the score. Basically, they're trying to use a theremin, right? And they create a score that test audiences hate, so they have to go back and scrap it and basically make it all again. It's a weird thing, but the score is more horror film, right?
It's one of the earliest uses of a theremin, if not the earliest. And I apologize, I can't remember off the top of my head. And I think it works great, though. It adds this wonderful little...
There's a level of tension.
Earthliness. It kind of detaches you from reality just a little bit, which serves the movie well as he becomes, you know...
More detached from reality.
More in the grips of his alcoholism.
Yeah, it's an incredible... Like, the production goes well. One of the things that happens near the end of the production, as the film is screened and stuff, and this is not necessarily anything to do with the box office or with the actual reviews or anything, but as screenings get out, what I think is one of the coolest things ever, the liquor industry and the lobby behind the liquor industry offers Paramount $5 million in cold, hard cash to just scrap it. So Billy Wilder shoots this movie, has everything. They do test screenings that don't do great with the test screening people because they don't know what the tone of the movie is. They see this actor that they really love, and he's kind of a dirtbag in the movie. Like there's no other easy way to say it. He's a guy struggling with addiction that just every chance he gets, he makes the wrong decision for the people that love him and for those that want to help him. And so, but the liquor industry tries to buy the movie, Rich. We haven't had that kind of stuff happen before where you like look up and you go,
Citizen Kane. and
but that was just somebody personally wanting it burned. This is an entire industry trying to say, hey, if you show this movie to people, they might get the wrong idea about our product. And where is Hollywood in the 40s and 50s looking at trying to take products out of movies? Like, this is like, I'll never look at anybody going, if I'm in a liquor store and somebody buying a bottle of rye whiskey again, I'll never be able to look at them the same way after this movie, to be honest. But it belies the fact they have a great movie. They basically know what they've gotten. They have this wonderful footage shot without anybody's knowledge. They have this great screenplay. What were you going to say? Something hit you.
Speaking of the New York shooting, now a lot of that bar that we see, the main bar, where Howard Da Silva is the bartender. Oh my God,
Nat's bar.
Yeah. That is based on an actual bar in Manhattan called PJ O'Rourke's. Not PJ O'Rourke's. What the hell am I saying?
What are you doing? PJ O'Rourke's.
Yeah, that's I always do that with that horrible writer.
Isn't it PJ Clark's?
PJ Clark's, yeah.
Okay.
And
this is the bar.
It still is in existence in New York. It's kind of a holdout building. All the other stuff that you saw around on the location footage in the movie has been raised, and they've erected, these skyscraper offices and stuff like that. Actually, if you go up the street about a block, you'll see the at that next intersection up north, you'll see the exterior of a location that they used for Oscorp in the Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies. But I have been to PJ Clark's. The inside pretty much matches the inside of the bar that they built on the soundstage. They actually shot in both locations, on a soundstage and at PJ Clark's.
Billy Wilder got all of his footage in New York, and then they finished on Paramount Soundstages, and basically, recreated, set the apartment sets and the, because basically the movie opens and when you're talking about production, the movie opens with this amazing tracking shot of New York City, and it pans all the way around, and it eventually hits a series of windows. It's utterly brilliant.
Oh, it's wonderful. And
there's flowers, and then there's clothing, and then out Don's window is a bottle of rye whiskey.
And I have sat at that bar, and I have ordered a rye whiskey shot.
Well, because I feel you have to. I feel like at some point you have to do the Ray Milland.
If they're not calling it the Ray, get a nice lunch.
If they're not calling it the Ray Milland, they're dumb.
I did not try to pay for my shot of whiskey with a typewriter, though, if that's what you're wondering.
That would have been amazing. That would have been incredible. That shot is ridiculous. Like, there's a shot in this movie where he's down on his luck. He has no money. He has a typewriter that he's trying to hawk on Purim, which again, it's Yom Kippur. It's Yom Kippur. We're in Purim now. Yeah, it's Yom Kippur, and basically all the pawn shops are owned by Jewish men. The ones that are in the Irish section of town close for Yom Kippur as well, because the Jewish folks close for St. Patrick's Day. It is great, and they call it a gentleman's agreement, and Ray Milland gets so angry at the people, like, why is your pawn shop not open? Like, what the hell? It's a high holiday, sir.
That's a great touch and a nice little detail, and I really hope that was true at the time.
It would have been. I would imagine it would have to be. It's the kind of thing where you're talking to where Spielberg goes on the
makeup. You go, wait, this is real. Let's put it in there.
One, it's like when Spielberg goes to like Martha's Vineyard for Jaws, and they tell him, 2 shooting stars in a row means bad luck for sailors, and then Quint gets eaten by a shark. Little things, little things. If you're paying attention, there's 2 shooting stars in Jaws. That's a gift. Take it, enjoy it. But the movie opens, much to the chagrin of the liquor industry, the hard liquor industry, which is hilarious. And again, it's not a comedy, right? It's not a comedy, or it's not, drinking as a comedy as in W.C. Fields, or drinking as a social cool thing, like in the Thin Man movies, or
it was just about to go there.
Yeah, perfect. It's not like that, and the box office kind of reflects that. So when you're looking at the numbers again, as we talk about it every time we do a movie like this, first off, it's not international, right? What you have to look for here is production budget and how much the movie grosses, and what the number of amounts of money in the production budget. So the box office gross for Lost Weekend is $11 million in 1945. It's a lot of money, Rich. The budget is $1.25 million. And if you do a little math and then you're quick with a calculator, or you're just gifted, that's 8.8 times production budget. So, if you make a movie, if you make a movie like about drinking in this day and age, like something, and I was trying to come up with like a comparison movie, and the only one I could really kind of come up with, Rich, that I thought was an interesting kind of like perfect kind of like pitch is Leaving Las Vegas, right? So Leaving Las Vegas, production budget is $4 million. It grosses 31.
Mm-hmm.
So 12 and a half times its production budget, which is about right.
Just did some quick figuring here on an inflation calendar. $11 million from 1945 is almost 183 million today.
It's insane. Like that. So this movie not only gets out there, there's a reason the liquor industry wants to burn it. Like it's a lot of people seeing it. It does very well. It becomes one of the more important films of 1945. Hence the reason it's on our list, right? And the reviews, if you're like, when you get into critical response and you're looking now, the critical response then is astounding. Best performance of Ray Milland's career. When you go to some place for us like Rotten Tomatoes, where you're looking at how the film kind of resonates, then for now, all over the place. It's at 97%, Rich, with a 90% audience score, which means people who end up watching because they have to for a college class or somebody recommends it to them, like we are, like, hey, this is a movie that if you have anybody dealing with substance abuse or addiction, it kind of paints this harrowing picture, but also it's a hopeful picture, right? You look at classic critics, Pauline Kael. She has a really funny blurb where she says the whole thing is short on imaginative resonance. What it has is the Brackett and Wilder speciality, a distinctively cruel and sometimes cruelly funny edge to it. And that's the truth. Like, one of the things about the Wilder films, like Double Indemnity and The Apartment and Sunset Boulevard and this, there is an edge to them that is bitterly funny while being painfully heartbreaking. And in this case, a cruel film for everybody involved that's in Don's life, right? It's harrowing at times, this movie, right? But Pauline Kael, basically Billy Wilder and Brackett worked together for a very long time, making these movies that are right on the edge of, you don't know to laugh at them or to be like shocked or to be like scared, or like he makes movies that are just these bombs of just swirling chaos that are just amazing. And this is one of them. This is one of those things where you watch it, and you rewatch it, and you go, wow, there is a lot going on here. It's very distinctly 1940s, but it's part thriller, it's part film noir, it's part this treatise on the struggling artist, right? Don is constantly talking about, I have a book in me. I know I have a book in me. I just need to get it out, and can't get it out because I need to find the bottle, right? So it has all these tropes going for it that are just stunning. It also has incredible cinematography, incredible, like, just weird shot selection. Like, there's like looks inside glasses with the camera where you go to the bottom of the glass and it kind of pans up, and it's just like you see the liquor shimmering on the surface. An incredible editing trick where they basically, you count the amount of time that Ray Milland has been at the bar by the number of bar marks on the bar is absolutely incredible. It goes from 1 or 2 little bar stains to 9, like, and it's just got this heart to it that you're rooting for the guy, and he's also so manic that you just like, he would definitely be in rehab if he were in our generation. He would definitely be in rehab. He would definitely be.
They talk about him, taking the cure, which is like an early form of rehab where you get, I'm not exactly sure what the process is, but we kind of went from taking the cure to, as
it didn't take.
We studied this idea of alcoholism as a disease more and more, and we learned more about it, and we learned more about psychology of drinking and things like that, how we could how to better address it until it kind of gets refined down to certain different courses of treatment you can take today, including, of course, AA. If you don't believe in God, and apparently AA, demands that you have that belief in a higher power as part of the process. There are other options, of course, you can pursue as well.
But yeah, it's one of those movies though where I think it becomes one of those assigned movies. But if you watch it, and you can actually, the techniques that Billy Wilder's using, the critics at the time, like it doesn't get a bad review, even though it's one of those movies that could have been shanked just for being so avant-garde of the time, right? Because it's one of those movies where you look back and you go, it could have been people going, we shouldn't be watching this, right?
Yeah. People might find it in bad taste at the time. Was a present danger. I've kind of looked around and I've not seen anything really written on it, but I would love to find out about what kind of conversations Billy Wilder was having with the Hayes office in terms of this movie, and making sure that they don't go over the line in terms of the production code, because there's a lot of stuff in here that I'm like, and even one of the things that kind of caught me off guard, because I'd forgotten about until I saw it again, is when he comes home the one night and she just basically stays overnight. Now, granted, they're in two separate rooms, separate beds.
Yeah,
but when he wakes up and tries to sneak out, she wakes up and she's in a robe. She's not sleeping in her regular clothes or anything. She's in a robe, and just the potential for that to hint at maybe.
Well, that's definitely one of the things.
That's something I was like, wow, I wonder what the Hayes Co's, kind of skate by on that. Is usually that's something that
the other really risque stuff. You're speaking of that. The other really risque. There is a prostitute character, in the film, and she, I believe it's Gloria. Let's see, Doris Dowling as Gloria, right? Mm-hmm. She plays this prostitute character, and it's icky. It's at best icky, because she has a bar that she hangs out at. Ray Milland goes to the bar. Ray Milland's met her. Ray Milland knows what she is, but she's basically going with men 3 times her age, and they come into town specifically to see her for a day, right? Mm-hmm. And for a tour around New York, a business meeting around New York, and so it's definitely high gloss, but it's one of those movies where the direction is amazing, the screenplay is amazing, when you're looking at everything about it, it's a movie that everybody should see, just to have the concept of being able to go, how does a filmmaker take everything available to him, from Jane Wyman, the actress that doing her first dramatic role, Ray Milland, who basically has a series of roles, but nothing quite this level, right?
No.
The cinematography, the photography that he's allowed to film in Bellevue, all these things, he brings it all together, and it creates this incredible look, a harrowing kind of frantic, edgy. Like, it's so edgy that you could easily see it being on Hulu next week. You know what I mean? Like it's.
Oh yeah.
There is nothing like there's nothing offensive in it or anything, but there is enough that if you wanted to tack pieces on here or there with like nudity for the prostitute or nudity for Jane Wyman or any Don and Susan hooking up, or it could easily play for us, right? And when you look at that, there's no franchise, but the legacy of this movie, right?
Yeah. I just want to kind of get back to Ray Milland as an actor for a second. This guy did everything. He did before this. He was in like a couple of the Bulldog Drummond's B movies. He did light comedy in The Major and the Minor. He had done some almost genre acting in The Uninvited. He had Ministry of Fear like the year before this. Great film noir or proto noir I would recommend to people. And then after this, he kind of kept going back to some comedy stuff like The Trouble with Women, another film noir like The Big Clock, which is great. Comedy again with It Happens Every Spring, which I just recently saw and thought he was absolutely funny and charming in that movie, and totally divorced from what we see here. He did a lot of everything. And and of course Hitchcock Style M for Murder like 10 years later in which was in 3D, which I recommend if you get a chance to see it in 3D. See it in 3D. It's really good.
Well, and he was also part of World War II veteran, and one of the things that comes up with The Lost Weekend, and one of the things that kind of like sets it, like I was saying, with him is he does all these comedies. He kind of is a player for Paramount where they've banked on him making money, right? He's a guy that makes money for them. So they want him in this role because if we're going to chance, making this super serious, harrowing, docudrama about alcoholism, first of its kind, we're going to set the rails on fire. They want somebody that they trust, and Paramount selling that to Billy Wilder becomes a very important aspect because Ray Milland doing this movie is basically it's a career definer for him, which is always interesting as well. And that's a side note on the legacy thing, right? We're not going to get a franchise out of it, obviously, but we are going to get a legacy out of it. And the first legacy that comes up is Academy Award win. This is an Academy Award winning film where an actor takes on the bottle, right? And it becomes a go-to. It becomes like the kind of thing where you want to get an Oscar nomination present day, right?
Do something with a social conscience.
Addiction heavy. We've had numerous movies. The movie I mentioned earlier, for people who were watching earlier, Leaving Las Vegas doesn't get made if this movie ever gets made. And to be honest, the biggest legacy I thought of immediately was Jane Wyman early in the movie says his brother Wick is basically saying, I'm done. I've had it. I've been dealing with this for 5 years. I'm out. And she's like, but if he had a heart attack or if his lungs failed him, you wouldn't be out. It's just like having a disease.
Mm-hmm.
It is one of our biggest legacy movies ever, in the sense that this movie actually constructed a social conscience around something that was viewed as a character flaw, right? And the amazing impact film can have when you have a filmmaker, a gifted filmmaker, gifted actors, a great screenplay, a wonderful story, and a dash of hope after a harrowing journey actually creeps into our social mores, how psychiatry views the addiction issue, how doctors view it, and it becomes a calling card, right? It becomes this incredible legacy of, finding out that this is actually a disease, a full-blown disease, and not just something where people have a problem with impulse control, right? It's an incredible legacy, Rich. It's one of the most incredible legacies we've ever talked about on the show. To be honest, I mean, we've talked about a ton of movies about Bond getting a conscience and all the other movies we talked about from 1982 about how important things are, with regards to E.T. or The Thing or whatever. But this movie helped change an entire view of psychiatry. And it's placated throughout the movie where it's just, hey, it's not a moral issue. It's wow, that guy doesn't have any self-control and he's too self-indulgent. Jane Wyman saying it's a disease is important. What about you? What's one for you? Where you look at it?
I'm thinking, this by this time, this is only Billy Wilder's 5th movie out of the 26 feature films he directed. Before that, we had The Bad Seed, The Major and the Minor with Ray Milland, Five Graves to Cairo, which is a fun adventure film, Double Indemnity, and then this. Those first 3, Bad Seed, Major and the Minor, Five Graves to Cairo, they're all decent films and well worth your time. Double Indemnity is just like a quantum leap above. And then Lost Weekend is, a quantum leap above there. This is like a 1-2 punch of cinema that really just cements his standing as one of the great American 20th century directors. And then he goes on from here, and of course he does Sunset Boulevard, Ace in the Hole, Stalag 17, Sabrina, The 7-Year Itch, The Spirit of St. Louis, Witness for the Prosecution, Some Like It Hot, The Apartment, 1, 2, 3, Irma La Douche, Kiss Me Stupid, The Fortune Cookie. I could go on for a couple of more films here that are just. He makes films
well. He makes films well into the 70s.
Yep, his last one was actually 1981's Buddy Buddy, which honestly is a bad note to go out on. But just overall, though,
they can't all be winners, Rich. They can't all be winners.
Maybe has like 2 or 3 certifiable duds in a out of 27.
Amazing. Well, no, Wilder's legacy is profound. Wilder's legacy. 10%. He's on the list, right? He's on the list of top 10 film directors of all time.
Yeah,
he's not only in the running. He's you could have arguments on what director maybe got the kind of funny but gritty underbelly of American society better than Billy Wilder. And you bring up something like Some Like It Hot, or you bring up Some Like It Hot is really kind of an amazing thing to talk about in this present time we're in right at this moment. Because, God knows we've been laughing at drag queens and people dressing up as girls for a long time. And now we're taking it way uber seriously. So it's ahead of his time, right? Where we're, and that's the thing about Wilder. Wilder always seems to be one step ahead when you're talking about being a director of film. Double Indemnity is such a film noir that it launches. It's like, for people who might be younger, like our age, or are watching the show, Double Indemnity is to film noir as Pulp Fiction is to all of the janky, horrible Pulp Fiction clones we got after Pulp Fiction. Double Indemnity causes a wave of film noir, and this movie causes the legacy of it. The idea that Ray Milland gets on and is naked and just, it wins Best Picture, Best Director, Best Actor, Best Screenplay. No nomination for Jane Wyman, and I actually look at that as a mistake.
That's a crime. That is a crime.
She is fantastic in this movie. Mm-hmm. But Jane Wyman, like you said, would get her chance. So the other thing that's interesting that has to be talked about legacy-wise has got to be that that Jane Wyman issue, right? So Jane Wyman gets into this movie, and then eventually she does get her chance, right? She, she ends up, starring in a bunch of movies and basically knocks it out of the park, as an actress. She works steadily all the way through the 70s, 60s, and 70s, and makes it to Falcon Crest in 1981. So she works the rest of her life.
Played Spock's mom in Star Trek.
Yes. But it's the kind of thing where
Ray Milland did 2 episodes of Battlestar Galactica. So,
but this is the movie where she first got critical notice. And it's the first time that she got actually, she was called out for her acting, right? And she wins in 1946, right? Oh no, she gets nominated in 46 for The Yearling.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So she parlays this movie into a series of, other roles, and she becomes a big star, like a massive female lead for Paramount and Universal. So that's definitely got to be. Ken McKernan writes, Ray Milland, frogs. Yes, frogs are captains. But that's the other thing. The interesting thing about this movie is that you have, the Wilder legacy, the Milland legacy, because he goes on and does Dial M for Murder. He becomes kind of a noir lead, right? And then also I would say, another legacy filmmaking wise comes in the sense that the idea that we're going to have hallucinations and show you what an addict is going through. And the movie that comes to mind that doesn't exist without The Lost Weekend, and this is going to shock some people, but Trainspotting doesn't exist. Trainspotting, which is one of the greatest movies ever made, doesn't exist without this movie about addiction, about funny, edgy, hallucinatory, harrowing. It doesn't exist without this movie.
And it's funny because, in addition to the alcohol industry thinking that Lost Weekend was going to make their product look bad, so they wanted the film to go unreleased. There were temperance unions in the 40s who were like, this is going to glamorize alcohol, and so we don't want this movie released. And honestly, when I hear that argument, I have the exact same reaction that I had to a friend's at the time fiance about when a bunch of us had gone off to see Trainspotting together. She was like, that movie just glamorized drugs. And I was like, what part of diving into a toilet to get your heroin was glamorous to you?
What part of seeing a baby walk on a ceiling was highlight for you? What part of dying from cat shit was glamorous?
Made you go, I want to try that.
I've never been more afraid of toxoplasmosis in my life. That movie terrified the shit out of me. Also, as a big guy, I'm a hard stick. So never going to be a heroin addict. Just not going to be. Anyway, but that movie again, the harrowing, but the funny, the hopeful, like the ending of this movie. The dot, the proverbial exclamation point, right? Mm-hmm. She comes into the room. She says, we can do this. His typewriter miraculously shows up at his door. By Nat, the bartender, brings it to him. And he's like, hey, I found it. And she's like, this is a sign, right? This is, I wasn't asking for a big miracle, but this is a miracle. You want to be an author. You can be Don the writer, right?
Yep.
And she goes to make breakfast, and what I will say, the highly amazing way that Ray Milland looks at alcohol in a glass or a bottle in this movie, it will change your life, because you're like, there is no actor on screen that is acting this. It is kind of like, from our standard, like you were saying earlier, right? the way we're reacting to natural actors. This is before the method, before Meisner, before Elie Kazan, and all like before all of that. So it's just he has this gleam in his eye, like it's Christmas, and she looks over and there's a glass, and he's smoking a cigarette because $5 million did not come from the cigarette industry to take that out. And he looks at the glass and he just throws the cigarette in the glass, and and then it cuts to like it's an amazing cut to the beginning of the movie where the bottle was, and it pans back and Paramount logo, and it's an incredibly well done movie. And it's just one of those things where it was nominated for 7 Academy Awards. It won 4 of them. And the idea that Jane Wyman wasn't nominated, this could have been like when you and I were talking. Here's another little tidbit that I noticed. It is one of 3 films, legacy-wise, right? So it's really funny that we picked this movie and then another movie. It's one of 3 films. Did you know this? That has also, first off, it's been deemed culturally significant by the Library of Congress. That happened in 2011, right? So that's a major legacy. So this movie is so important that if a nuclear bomb goes off, we're going to definitely still have it. Yes, great. But it is also it's also one of 3 films in the history of the Academy Awards that also won the first was a first prize winner at Cannes. So the other 2 films that did that. So at this point, Cannes was called the Grand Prix at Cannes. We affectionately call it the Palme d'Or now, right? Mm-hmm. So the 3 films that have won Best Picture and Palme d'Or at Cannes are Marty, The Lost Weekend, and a movie called Parasite, which won in 2019. So might be some foreshadowing there. Mm-hmm. But it's just funny. It's another one of those movies where we picked this list of movies to do the Oscar Decade Cavalcade. And as we've gone through it and done research, and there are specific things where these movies all have, it's weird. But as we progress over the next 8 weeks or 6 weeks or whatever, the 8 weeks, there are a lot of these films have things that are in common. And so it's an interesting kind of, you notice the things in common after it happens. So this movie, and there might be another movie that fits this criteria of winning Best Picture and what is affectionately known as the Palme d'Or at Cannes later on, and throwing it out there. So as we start to wrap up for tonight, one of the things we want to talk about is next week. So we're going to hit the 50s, baby. We're moving up, baby. Right. And you can't really have an Oscar Decade Cavalcade. You can't have any kind of like a movie show like ours and never ever eventually hit Bette Davis. So next week we have All About Eve. It is a barn burner of a flick. And Bette Davis is a scene chewing. It is a Best Picture winner. It is our 50s pick. It is an astounding piece of cinema. It is going to be a hold on. It's going to be a bumpy ride, kind of a.
You took my joke, damn it!
I didn't mean to do your joke.
No, I was just basically going to say the same thing. Just when you sit down.
How's the ride going to be, Rich? I'll say up.
Strap yourself in. Because it's going to be a bumpy ride.
It's going to be a bumpy ride. And that's next week. All About Eve, not enough people, I think, talk about it. Not enough people talk about her. She's one of the great Hollywood stories is the acting career of Bette Davis. Because she did everything. And she did most of it amazingly well. And
now, if you haven't seen this movie, you can check it out. It's on Amazon Instant Video, iTunes, Vudu, and Google Play. as well as being, available.
Yeah, and we encourage here. What's great about this Oscar Decade Cavalcade for us is taking a love of film and putting it out there so people can watch stuff. And maybe it's not something you would necessarily watch, but like maybe you do watch it because you're playing along at home with us, and it'll end up being one, an education, and two, like sometimes star power, we overuse the term now. But next week, if you watch this movie before we get to next Monday, you will understand the concept of star power, of a mega star that's put in front of a camera and just eats the scenes around her, because she is on fire in this movie.
Yes.
And the movie itself is crisp, well written.
Yeah, and she's amazing. George Sanders is amazing. I enjoy Celeste Holm in this. Ann Baxter is amazing.
It's a great 50s movie. It's lush and it's well written and it's everything you'd want in a Best Picture winner, and also everything you'd want in an old Hollywood picture. And we're super excited about doing that. And that'll be next Monday night.
From the great writer-director Joseph L. Mankiewicz, Wilkes-Barre native.
Yes, there we go. There, I didn't jump on that one. I feel good about that. Yeah. So other things coming up this week on the Indie Escape Network, we have to talk a little bit about this. Sticky Microphone on Thursday, March 9th. Special guest, voice actor and writer Billy West. Rich, there are so many characters on the screen here. So many characters. I had no idea he was the bee from the Honey Nut Cheerios.
Oh yeah.
I had no idea about that. That one I look at and I just go, really? But like Ren and Stimpy, I know about. I was definitely a Ren and Stimpy guy, and I am consistently a Bugs Bunny guy. I want to ask. One of the questions I'm definitely going to ask is, was Billy Wilder correct? Was Bugs Bunny correct in trying to saw off the state of Florida? And also just Ren and Stimpy. You have to ask about Log, right? It rolls downstairs.
Brannigan
rolls over the neighbor's dog.
And old timers like me, of course, remember him from the stint he did on Howard Stern show, which everything from like Larry Fine to Cincinnati Reds owner and well-known racist Marge Schott.
He's a huge get for the network, and we congratulate Wendy and her co-host on that. And that's coming up Thursday night on the Indie Escape Network. It's a really good show. There's a lot of in-depth stuff going on. They just had the kid who plays Art the Clown, David Thornton, on this past week. So they're doing amazing things on the network. Rich, where can people find stuff for you if they're trying to find things for you?
Well, I got a lot of stuff coming up because this is the third podcast I've done inside of 36 hours. And frankly, I'm tired of my own voice. And I know there are probably a few of you out there going, I never would believe that would happen. As a member of the son of a
bastards,
as a member of the Philadelphia Film Critics Circle, I am frequently on their podcast called Film Scribes. We recorded an episode yesterday that's going to be out later this week, where four of us sit around and talk about Creed 3, Cocaine Bear, and Operation Fortune. Also, I have another podcast that I do with my very good friend, Natasha Bogutsky, and we recorded yesterday as well, where, again, I wound up talking some more about Operation Fortune, as well as us doing a review of Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. It had just been recently released in the theaters. It's available right now on the Criterion Channel streaming service, along with a couple of other great Michelle Yeoh movies. Heroic Trio.
Yeah, we're stepping through the Michelle Yeoh-essence right now.
Oh yes, there's some great stuff on there. And you can find that at bigpicturepod.com. All of my writing is, of course, at filmbuffonline.com. Also has a link to Big Picture Podcast on there as well. And you can follow me on Twitter at FilmBuffRich, where you'll get a lot of comics, movies, and some progressive politics.
Lefty politics, as you would say. I would agree every once in a while. Yeah, I just think it's practical. I don't know about lefty. I think it's practical. You can find me, JW the Movie Guy, on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. That's where I do most of my wares. I also am part of the Loud and Nerdy podcast. We have a show tomorrow night, Tuesday. We also have the Loud and Nerdy group and the page. So if you find you want to get, posters, trailers, we just dropped a bunch of things. The Ninja Turtle trailer blew my mind. I actually am super excited about that movie in every conceivable way, and super hopeful that all the stunt casting that's gone on with that movie ends up being as amazing as it could be. I'm looking at you. I want Splinter to be absolutely awesome. And I think it has potential with who they picked. Also, I may, and this is, we're talking about it. I may appear on at the end of the night next week if they have a show. They may not have a show because David might be on vacation to do Oscar stuff. I don't know, but I am thinking about just getting in and getting on the Indie Escape page as a Generation movie title later in the week. And if you have Oscar questions or Oscar pools that you would like to go over, I think I'm going to answer the questions maybe for a half hour, 45 minutes, just as you're trying to win some cash, some cabbage, some scratch. I do pretty well in these things when we have the pools. I have some picks I think are going to be pretty well. I think if you just bet the house.
Really quick, what are some of your picks, some of your hope fors at the Oscars this coming Sunday?
So I think it's going to be a pretty good night for hot dog fingers the world over. I think my biggest thing, I'm super excited about Ke Huy Quan. I want that kid back in rotation. Because I think we could get a lot of cool things out of it, like throwing him in the Marvel universe. If they were to ever do a short round series, I would be so fucking jazzed. I'm super hopeful about Michelle Yeoh. Because I think we've taken her for granted, frankly. And I think the biggest bloodbath category is going to be supporting actress, because I think the actress that won at the SAG Awards is not necessarily the best performance by a supporting actor in that movie. So I don't know what's going to... That's the one award where you say to me, well, how the SAGs go? Jamie Lee Curtis won. Yes, that's great. But she's not even the best person in the movie. Like, Stephanie Sue is way, like, not way better, but a substantial character in that movie that's a very difficult character to pull off. So I'm super hopeful for her. I'm always, it's not going to happen, but I'm always, if you ask me who I'm pulling for, if Steven Spielberg makes a movie, I'm pulling for Spielberg.
I know you are.
He is somebody that I've been with since I was 7. So I was talking about it. This is because Oscars are a holiday for you, like they are for me. I was talking about it. Like, somebody asked me, it was with a friend. We watched Cocaine Bear last weekend. He asked me, what was the time you realized how important the Oscars were to you? And I was like, 1981. I was 7. I didn't have to go to school the next day. So my dad viewed it as a holiday, and he didn't understand the concept of, he goes, if you don't want to go to school tomorrow, you don't have to go. Right? So stay up as late as you want, fill up on, obviously let me fill up on stuff, but like, eat snacks and whatnot, and just watch the Oscars and just bask in the glow. And 7 was the year where I was discernibly rooting for things. Right. And then, as you progress through life, 80, 81, 82, I was definitely rooting for something. you know, and like and then you get to the 90s and you're rooting for certain things, and you know, you start to, it becomes like ingrained in your essence. And the Oscars for me are, so I'm also looking for good in memoriam segments. I'm always looking for like, anytime we recognize Hollywood history or Hollywood, the idea of like, you know, whatever montage we're going to put together. I'm intrigued with the, you know, how this is going to sound weird, but, and I know you've thought about this. I want to know how the show is going to pivot from the way Kimmel is going to take away the power of the slap. It's important that Kimmel gets in, roots all that garbage out, and make sure that we're not focused on trivial things, if that makes sense. Like,
yeah,
he needs to get in, and Kimmel needs to root it around and figure it out. But who are you rooting for? Is there anybody? Ki Huy Kwan and Michelle Yeoh are the two.
Of course, Michelle Yeoh, yeah. Brendan Fraser for The Whale.
I think I'm on the opposite end of you. For the person I'm for Best Actor, I think I'm rooting for Austin Butler, but that's just because I'm. But Fraser's great, and I think Fraser will get
for Fraser and for Key especially. Hollywood loves a good comeback story, and both of these, you know, while the details are different, they're both so heartwarming. Everybody loves these guys. That I think, you know, it's just there's going to be a hopefully kind of like an emotional, nostalgic love that carries them both across the finish line. I'm really hoping Sarah Polley gets Best Adapted Screenplay for Women Talking.
That is a messy category. That is a messy category. Well, and that's the thing. Like, I think one of, you know, you want, what I would also like, and this is going to sound weird, but I would like folks to watch in an effort to try to get it back on track and have some sort of skin in the game. I think one of the reasons we have so many blockbusters this year is to get skin in the game. And maybe we find that there, you know, as movie fans, we're not far apart on things. We're not as far apart on things as we think we are, right? And that's one of the things that I take away from the Oscars. The Oscars are the one night of the year where you can have somebody that loves Maverick and also somebody that loves The Whale or loves Women Talking or loves Everything Everywhere All at Once. But that movie seems to be the movie. It was the little movie that could in the box, like at the box office last year. It's progressive.
If Everything Everywhere All at Once loses, it's only going to lose because of the way that the Oscars Best Picture preferential ballot works. And I mean, it's a complicated thing of like, if the number one choice for everybody the number one choice only gets 40%, or whatever. I can't remember exactly how it works.
It's very wonky. It's wonky enough that there could be an upset.
Yeah.
But I just don't think so. I just don't think so at this point.
If there is an upset, it's going to go then to either All Quiet on the Western Front or The Fabelmans. Those are my the two backups.
They're the two. Well, and The Fabelmans is one of those movies where it's about, you know, the Hollywood. So the Hollywood enjoys being the Hollywood.
And if the song from RRR doesn't win Best Original Song, Burn Down the State.
It's a great song. It's a great movie. Yeah, but Joe says good stuff. Ashley says good stuff, and then he says that'd be awesome, JW. I'm thinking about. I think we can get it done and get it up, and maybe, you know, people pop in and just talk about their Oscar pools or whatever, and try to get a gauge on it. We'll try to do that later in the week. But thank you for joining us tonight. We'll see everybody next week. Again, next week, for anybody who's playing at home on the scorecard, Bette Davis, All About Eve.
20th Century Fox masterpiece.
It's a masterpiece, and the arrows are pointing at a particular person. It's Eve. We'll see everybody next week. Thanks for joining us. Thank you for